Gotta make myself look cooler. Got my notebook here. All right. Astrophotography. What's up everybody, how are we all doing today? Today I wanted to hop on here and talk about some astro photos and what you need to be doing to get started taking photos of the stars, photos of the night sky, really kind of anything with low light, although this is more pertaining to astrophotography. But yeah, so let's dive right in. First off, so you do need some equipment. Obviously, you want a camera. You probably want something that's a little bit better with low light. Now, I know I started with a Rebel T6, and that it was, of course, it's a crop sensor. It's not that great with low light, but I was able to get some photos with that. This camera that I'm on now, the 6D Mark II, has a full frame sensor. It is much better with the low light. It's just a lot easier to do astrophotography with a full frame camera that has better low light capabilities. Other than the camera, what you need is you're definitely gonna need a tripod. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. I got one right here. It's just my GorillaPod. This isn't the one that I use, but I mean I could definitely use it. You got little bendy legs. I mean any sort of tripod that's going to hold your camera still is going to do you good, because if you try to do any astrophotography handheld, no matter how still you think you are, you're going to be moving. Even if it's just a little bit, you're going to get a little bit of shake in there. And I don't really care how good you think you are at holding your camera still, it's not going to happen. Now the other thing you're going to need to do within the camera settings, you can either put a timer on the shutter to where after you hit the shutter button, it waits a few seconds before it starts. I know this one comes with a 2-second and a 10-second. A lot of times I just use the 2-second because I kind of have all my settings set. Hit the button, it goes after a couple seconds. You could use a remote. I know Canon has a pretty good smartphone app called Canon Camera Connect that turns your phone into a remote for the camera. You can actually view the screen on it as well, and you can adjust all your settings so you don't have to be on the camera touching the screen and moving buttons around. Or you can just have a clicker remote that connects through the sensor in your camera as well. That'll work just fine because you want to do as much as you can to limit the shake. You want to keep as still as possible. Now another thing you're going to want to do, your camera will not be able to do autofocus when you're taking pictures of the stars, so you will need to switch to manual focus and go that way. Luckily the lens that I'm actually using right now, so I can't really show it, is Canon's EF 24-105 L series. It's f4, and actually on top, so it has a little window that shows my focus. For a few stops on the focus ring, it shows the infinity, or like just kind of like the furthest away focusing point is for 24, 35, 50, and 70, I think. I think it has all those on there, but it definitely has 24. That's what I typically shoot with anyway. Which brings me to my next point, is that you're also going to want to use a wider angled lens. Now anything that you have that drops below an f4, so typically an f4 all the way down to even an f1.2, those will all work. You don't really want to push much higher than that, or I guess smaller than that. Typically wide angle lenses, they do work the best, just because you just have the wider field of view. You can capture a lot more. Like right now, this is at 24 right now. I'm sitting in my corner here. There's not much room, but it looks like there's a lot of room because I mean my hands are still on screen. I have very long arms, and you can just capture a lot more. It's a lot easier to do that. All right, so now I've kind of suggested gear to use. So what we're gonna do now is hop into the settings. What settings you need to set your camera at to get at least a good starting photo to work off of. Now your f-stop or your aperture, that's where we're gonna start. You just want to open up that thing as wide as it'll go. Like I mentioned a little bit ago, typically anywhere from, all the way down is 1.2 up to 4, then that's kind of the range you want to stick in. So if you have like a lens that only opens up to a 5.6, that's not really going to work too well. You're going to have to crank up all your other settings just to get a decent image out of that. So luckily this one opens up to an f4, so right on the brink of that, and I'm able to get some pretty decent pictures. If I find some, maybe I'll link them right here, or not link them, but throw them up on the screen. Also, I should mention, as I'm going through these settings, if none of this stuff kind of makes sense, guess what? I made a video on these 3 things that I'm going over. Your main settings of shooting manual mode. I made a video a while ago about that, and I do believe, what is it? I think it's this corner. I think I got it. I think it's in this corner. I'll link that up there. And you can go ahead and watch that. Make sure that you understand that these 3 settings are what you're gonna need to do for any image that you're shooting, especially in manual mode. So the next setting we're gonna talk about is your ISO speed. Now your ISO speed, you're gonna wanna stick with anywhere 800 to 3200. Below that, if you want to drop down to a 400, you're going to need a lens that opens up a little bit wider on the aperture. The ISO speed is kind of based on your camera's capabilities, because with a crop frame sensor, you're going to want to not bump the ISO up as high just because you're going to get a lot of grain. So you want to keep that a little bit lower. So trying to go for that 400 and having a lens that the aperture opens up really wide on would be more beneficial to you. Like I have just a simple nifty 50 that I went over in my camera bag video. It's just 50mm lens, the 1.8, so it does open up fairly wide. And when I had the crop frame sensor, it helped a lot to get some at least decent astro photos. On the high side, Jesus, pause for hose there. I'm in the basement here, so I get all the sounds. I have a couple blankets set up so that it's not echoing like crazy, but literally anything that happens above me, anywhere in the house, you can probably actually hear water right now. Because I think the hose is right here. Yeah. Anyway, on the high side of that, so near your 3200, if you want to bump that up to 6400, now you just really want to make sure that your camera can handle that. So your sensor can handle that. You want to make sure you have a camera that has the ability to do that. I've been up that high with this camera. It's done decently. I had to do a little bit more in post noise reduction and such, but it did decent, not bad. But I typically stick with the 800 to 3200. That's gonna get me what I want, and because I'm actually, honestly, I'm usually hovering right around 1600 when I am shooting these photos, because pretty much everything I have is right in the middle as of quality and capabilities. So now the one that's probably, I don't want to say the most important, but it's just as important as the other ones. It's just, this one just has a little bit more to elaborate on. So your shutter speed. Typically it's going to be somewhere 15 to 30 seconds long, and this kind of explains why you need a tripod, why you need a remote or a timer, because the shutter, the mirror, if you're using a typical DSLR, the mirror flips up and exposes that sensor, and that's going to be going on for 15 to 30 seconds. I feel like a teacher. I can wait. I can wait. Don't worry. Cool. Alright, like I was saying, shutter, the mirror is going to be flipped up for 15 to 30 seconds, exposing the element. Now, it wants to capture everything that's in front of it, so even if it moves slightly, it's going to capture everything in there, and that's where you kind of see that, like, a motion blur or something like that. Or if you've seen any, like, what they call rollers, if you do auto photography, you set the shutter speed like a little bit slower, so maybe like 1/125, and that way when you snap the photo, everything's moving so fast, like the background and the wheels are spinning, so they're kind of blurred, but the vehicle is still like still. There's not a lot of motion blur there because that's what you were photographing. It's moving in the same direction and the same speed that you are going. But anyway, so that's why you want a tripod, that's why you want a remote. Now, what I really wanted to talk about in this video, probably in the title of this, I don't know yet, but is the 500 rule. So this is for full frame cameras. Now, the 500 rule. I give up. All right, let's try that again. Now the 500 rule, this is for your shutter speed. What you want to do is you're going to take 500 divided by your shutter speed. Now you do have to do a little bit of math, I'm sorry, but I mean, just pull out your phone. 500 divided by your shutter speed. Now that is going to get you your recommended, 500 divided by your focal length. Now that's going to get you your recommended shutter speed range. Now when I shoot on this 24mm, so I take 500 divided by 24, and that shoots out a number. It's like, actually I have it written right here, the 20.833 repeating. I don't have that shutter speed on my camera. I do have a 20-second one, and you always want to round down on that. You don't want to go, because that number is what you don't want to push past in order to not get star trails. Now, star trails are what looks like motion blur, but it's not. It's like literally just because our planet is rotating, you get a little bit of the movement there, as because the stars don't stay in the same spot, even though they are, you know, light years away. So you will get like a little star trail. They won't be perfect white dots all around. They'll be like little tiny white lines. Now if you're going for some star trail, cool, you can adjust your settings, play with your settings, get like a 3-minute exposure and get like some crazy star trails. I've done that before. It's really fun. But this is, you know, basic astrophotography. You don't really want to push past, for me, that 20-second range. So then I can adjust all my other settings accordingly, pretty much just ISO, depending on residual light coming from either, if I'm shooting to the north, Chicago, I get a lot of residual light from there, a lot of light pollution, so it kind of like, I get like an upper glow from the bottom. So I typically try to shoot to the south or the west of me. That gets me my best photos, and without a lot of light pollution at the bottom of the photo. That's kind of where the ISO range comes in. That's why the ISO range is the biggest range, because ISO is technically, or it's like basically artificial light that you're adding to the photo. So sometimes you need more, sometimes you need less. If you're up in the mountains, you're gonna need a little bit more. If you're like where I'm at, I'm not in a suburb, I'm in like rural areas like southwest of Chicago, farmland and stuff, so I don't get a lot of light pollution. But if I shoot north, like I said, I do. Now you can follow the 500 rule with a crop sensor if that's what you're shooting on, that's what you're working with. The only thing that you add to your little equation, you do 500 divided by the focal length, and then if you're shooting on Canon, you divide by 1.6, because that is the crop for the ASP. It's the crop for the sensor. If you're shooting on Nikon, that is 1.5, not 1.6. So you just slap that on the end of your equation there, and that will get you your shutter speed range. Well, there you have it. That's all I have for you on this. I will say it's not perfect for everything. It's not perfect for everything you want to do, but if you're looking for basic astrophotography, you're looking to get started on taking some photos of the stars, because this is like, honestly, if you talk to me in person about this, it's something I completely nerd out about. I love doing it, and I love going out with people and just kind of like, because I mean, with me, I get 20 seconds per photo, so I mean, hit the shutter button, go about your conversation. You're just chilling underneath the stars, talking to people, taking dope photos of it. So what I want you to do, if you like this video, give it a big thumbs up. If you have any suggestions for me, go ahead and leave them in the comments. Other than that, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Like that? Little Peter McKinnon hat flip. Peace.